Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time we're going to be talking about something um,
Mhm.
pretty interesting, I think.
Hmm.
At least it was to me. It's all about tourism,
Sure.
that massive global industry
Yeah.
and how it kind of intersects with the idea of green development.
Yeah. It's such an important topic,
It is.
especially right now
Yeah.
with climate change and, the whole push for sustainability. It's
Mm.
like how do we make sure that all of this economic growth from tourism
Yeah.
is actually happening in a way that isn't destroying the planet?
Yeah, exactly. And we found some really cool sources for this deep dive. We've got this research paper, and it's all about China.
Okay.
And it's actually published on a .gov website. So
Oh, wow. So it's like
yeah,
official.
it's official research.
Yeah.
And then we've also got this leaflet from the World Tourism Organization,
Of
which,
course.
they're like the authority.
They're like the big international organization for tourism. Yeah.
So we're kind of getting like a local and a global perspective.
Yeah, a nice balance.
Yeah. And one of the things that I thought was super interesting is this idea that like the impact of tourism on green development
Yeah.
isn't always a straight line. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. It's not just like more tourists equals more problems, or the opposite, more tourists equals,
Yeah.
more environmental awareness.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's some nuance to it.
Totally. And the research paper really gets into that by looking at China specifically.
Oh, okay. So like what's the situation in China when it comes to like green development in general?
Well, they're definitely making progress in terms of like their green development efficiency.
What does that mean?
Basically, it means they're getting better at producing economic growth
Oh,
with less of an impact on the environment.
done it.
But they're kind of starting from a tough spot because, they had this period of really rapid economic growth,
Oh, yeah.
and that definitely came at a cost to the environment.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like they were focused on growing the economy, and now they're like, okay, wait,
Yeah,
we need to figure out how to do this sustainably.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this research is really looking at like, okay, where does tourism fit into all of this?
Got it.
Does it help? Does it hurt?
Yeah, does tourism make China more green or less green?
Right. And what they found is actually kind of surprising.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
Well, it seems like tourism is actually having a positive impact on their green development.
Really?
Yeah, so it's not that doom and gloom picture that we sometimes hear.
That's really interesting because you always hear about like, oh, the negative impacts of tourism,
Right.
like, overcrowding, pollution, all that stuff.
Totally. Yeah, and those things are definitely real, but this research suggests that like there's more to this story.
Okay, so it's not just like tourism bad, environment bad.
Exactly. And this is where this idea of a threshold effect comes in.
Threshold effect.
Yeah, so basically the idea is that the level of tourism development in a place actually changes how much tourism impacts green development.
Okay, so it's not just about like the number of tourists. It's
Right.
about like how developed the tourism industry is.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like a quality versus quantity kind of thing.
Got it. I'm starting to see where this is going.
Yeah.
So like, how did the researchers figure this out, this whole threshold effect thing?
Well, what they did is they looked at how tourism impacts green development at different levels of development.
Okay, so like different stages of tourism?
Yeah, exactly. So they
Hmm.
found that like in areas with low tourism development,
Okay.
the impact on green development tends to be positive but pretty small.
Okay.
But then as tourism grows and becomes more established,
Yeah.
you move into like a medium level of development and the positive impact gets bigger.
Interesting.
And then finally, in areas with like a really high level of tourism development,
Yeah.
that's where you see the biggest and most positive impact on green development.
Oh, wow. So it's like tourism levels up.
Yeah,
And as it levels up, it gets better for the environment.
exactly. That's a great way to put it.
I like that.
Yeah, it's like each stage unlocks new benefits
Yeah.
for the environment.
Okay, so we're not just talking about like the number of tourists coming in.
Right.
It's about how the whole tourism industry is set up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. How it's managed and, how it's integrated into the overall development of a place.
Yeah, so it's a more mature tourism industry is actually better for the environment.
Yeah. That's what the research suggests.
Okay, so we're seeing that tourism can actually be a force for good, environmentally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
But it depends on the level of development. But what about the economics of it all?
Right, because green development isn't just about the environment.
It's got to work for people, too.
Exactly. It's about economic growth that's sustainable and benefits local communities.
Yeah.
And the research does actually look at the economic side of tourism and green development.
Okay. So does it find like a similar threshold effect where
Mhm.
tourism becomes like economically better as it develops?
Well, it's complicated. It's not always a simple positive relationship.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in the early stages of tourism development,
Yeah.
the focus is often on just attracting visitors and making money.
Yeah. Get those tourist dollars flowing.
Exactly. And sometimes that can happen at the expense of sustainability or, the well-being of local communities.
Right. So it's like short-term gains,
Yeah,
long-term problems.
exactly. And there's even this thing called the Dutch disease, which we should probably explain for our listeners who might not know.
Yeah. What is that?
So basically, it's this phenomenon where a sudden influx of foreign currency,
Okay.
often from a booming industry like tourism,
Mm-hmm.
it can actually harm other sectors of the economy.
Really? How does that work?
Well, it can drive up the value of the local currency,
Okay.
which makes exports less competitive and can lead to job losses in other industries.
Oh, wow. So like too much tourism too fast can actually hurt the economy.
Yeah, it's a risk, especially if it's not managed carefully.
Got it. So it's like finding that balance
Exactly.
between growing the tourism industry,
Mm.
but also making sure it's sustainable.
Yeah, and the research suggests that as tourism develops and becomes more mature,
Okay.
it can actually start to generate more sustainable and equitable economic benefits.
Okay. So how does that work?
Well, for one thing, a more developed tourism sector tends to be more diversified.
Okay.
So it's not just about hotels and resorts.
Yeah.
It's also restaurants, shops, tour operators, transportation services, all sorts of things.
It's like spreading the wealth a little bit.
Exactly. And that creates a more robust and resilient local economy.
That makes sense. If one thing takes a hit, the whole economy doesn't collapse.
Right. And as tourism develops, it can also lead to greater investment in infrastructure, education, and training,
Okay.
which can benefit the local population in the long run.
So it's not just about like short-term profits.
Right.
It's about building a more sustainable future for the whole community.
Exactly. And that really ties in with the whole idea of green development, which is about, economic well-being and social equity, not just environmental protection.
It's like all those pillars of sustainability got to be strong.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot where economic growth, environmental sustainability, and social progress all reinforce each other.
So it sounds like we're seeing that in China, tourism can be a positive force for this kind of holistic development.
That's what the research is suggesting, yeah.
Okay, so we've got the China picture starting to come into focus,
Mm-hmm.
but let's zoom out a little bit. What's the global perspective on all of this tourism and green development stuff?
Well, that's where our second source comes in the leaflet from the World Tourism Organization.
Okay, so what's the UN's take on all of this?
Well, they're actually really big on tourism as a key part of the global shift towards a green economy.
Really?
Yeah, they see it as a way to contribute to all those sustainable development goals,
Okay.
like reducing poverty, creating jobs, conserving biodiversity, mitigating climate change, all that good stuff.
Wow, so they're putting tourism right up there with like renewable energy and all those other solutions.
Yeah, they're saying it's a crucial piece of the puzzle.
That's fascinating because you don't always hear tourism talked about in that way.
Right, but they're saying it has the potential to make a real difference.
So are they just talking about this in like general terms, or do they have any specific?
Oh, they have some numbers. They've crunched the numbers.
Anyway, not me.
They're saying that if we can green tourism,
Okay.
make it more sustainable and eco-friendly,
Mm-hmm.
we could see some pretty impressive reductions in resource use and emissions worldwide.
Okay, now I'm really curious. What kind of reductions are we talking about here?
Well, they're estimating that we could potentially see significant decreases in energy consumption,
Okay.
water usage, and waste generation.
That's huge. I mean, those are some of the biggest environmental challenges we face.
Exactly. And they're saying tourism could actually be part of the solution.
Okay, so what would this greening of tourism look like in practice?
Well, we're talking about things like hotels and resorts adopting energy-efficient technologies, implementing water conservation measures, promoting responsible waste management.
So it's like those everyday operational changes,
Yeah,
but scaled up across a massive industry.
exactly. And it's not just about what businesses do.
Right.
It's also about how tourists themselves behave.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
We all have a role to play.
Totally. So the UN is emphasizing things like responsible travel choices,
Okay.
like opting for eco-friendly transportation, reducing waste, respecting local cultures and environments.
So it's a collective effort.
It is everybody involved in tourism destinations, businesses, tourists, we all need to be on board.
And the UN is saying this is like a win-win situation.
Yeah.
Not only does sustainable tourism help the environment, but it can also create economic opportunities, empower local communities, promote cultural understanding. Wow, so they're painting a pretty optimistic picture of tourism's potential.
They are, yeah. They're saying it can be a force for good on multiple levels.
Okay, so we've gone from this deep dive into the research on China to this broader global perspective.
Yeah.
And it seems like there's this growing consensus that tourism can actually be a positive force for change.
Yeah.
Both for the environment and for people.
But it depends on how we approach it.
Right. It's not just about tourism in the abstract.
Exactly.
It's about how we develop it, manage it, and participate in it.
Yeah. In a way that benefits both people and the planet.
So it's about making sure tourism is a sustainable and equitable force for good in the world.
Exactly.
I don't know about you, but I'm finding all of this really thought-provoking.
Me too. It's fascinating to see how complex this relationship is.
Yeah, and I bet our listeners are eager to hear more about what this looks like in practice.
Oh, I'm sure they are.
Well, then let's dive into some of those examples in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. All right, so we've talked about how tourism can be a real driver of green development, you know, if it's done right. But, like, what does that actually look like?
Yeah,
you know?
Right. Yeah, let's get into some specifics.
Yeah, what are some examples of sustainable tourism initiatives that are actually making a difference out there in the world?
Well, one that comes to mind right away is the whole concept of eco-lodges.
Okay, eco-lodges.
Yeah, they're becoming super popular, especially in destinations with, like, amazing natural beauty and biodiversity.
I've heard of them, but I'm not sure I totally get it. Like, what makes an eco-lodge different from just a regular hotel?
Well, it's all about minimizing their environmental impact while still offering guests like a really unique and immersive experience in nature.
Okay, so it's like being in nature, but without harming nature.
Exactly. And they do that in a bunch of ways. Like they use sustainable building materials, renewable energy sources, water conservation systems, things like that.
So it's like built into the design of the place.
Yeah, it's not just an afterthought. It's like baked into the whole concept.
I like that. And it's not just about like minimizing their own impact, right? They're also trying to like contribute to the community and the environment around them.
Totally. A lot of them will source their food and supplies locally.
Okay.
Which supports the local economy and reduces their carbon footprint.
Yeah, that makes sense. And some of them even offer like educational programs for guests.
Yeah, that's a big part of it, educating people about conservation and promoting responsible travel practices.
So it's like a learning experience too.
Yeah, it's about more than just relaxing and having fun. It's about understanding the place you're visiting.
Do you have a favorite example of an eco-lodge that's like really doing things right?
Oh, there are so many good ones. It's hard to choose.
I bet.
But one that always stands out to me is the Black Rock Lodge in Belize.
Okay. I've never been to Belize. Tell me about it.
So it's nestled in the rainforest.
Sounds amazing.
It is, and they're powered by solar energy.
Wow.
They have composting toilets, a rainwater harvesting system. It's really impressive.
So they're like off the grid?
Pretty much. And the best part is you get to wake up to the sounds of the rainforest and know that you're not harming it by being there.
Yeah, that's a pretty amazing feeling.
It is. It's like you're actually part of the solution.
Okay, so eco-lodges are a great example of sustainable accommodation. But what about, like, other parts of the tourism industry?
Yeah.
Like transportation tours, destinations themselves.
Totally. I mean, the push for sustainability is happening everywhere in tourism.
Okay, so give me some examples.
Well, a lot of destinations are starting to promote alternative modes of transportation, like cycling or walking tours.
Okay. Yeah, I love that.
It's a great way to reduce reliance on cars and buses.
It's healthier, too.
And it's a more intimate way to experience a place,
Yeah, you're not just whizzing by in a car. You're actually, like, in it.
Exactly. And you get some exercise.
Bonus.
What
about tour operators?
Yeah. Are they getting on board with the sustainability stuff?
Oh, yeah, for sure. There are tons of tour operators now who are all about responsible travel.
Okay, so what does a responsible tour look like? Well, let's say you're going on a wildlife safari in Kenya.
Okay.
A responsible tour operator would use fuel-efficient vehicles.
Yeah.
They'd partner with local communities to provide authentic cultural experiences, and they'd contribute to conservation efforts to protect the animal.
So it's like a win-win-win.
Exactly. The tourists have an amazing experience, the local community benefits, and the environment is protected.
It's giving back to the place you're visiting.
Yeah, and it's not just about exotic destinations either.
Right.
We're seeing a lot of sustainable tourism initiatives in cities, too.
Oh, that's interesting. What kind of stuff are they doing?
Well, a lot of cities are investing in green infrastructure, like parks and green spaces,
Okay.
to improve air quality and make the city more livable.
Yeah, those are always nice to have.
And they're promoting public transportation and bike sharing programs.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I get those cars off the road.
Exactly. And some cities are even going further with certification programs for businesses.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so they can, get a stamp of approval for being sustainable.
Right. So as a tourist, you're supporting a business that's doing the right thing.
Exactly. It gives you that peace of mind.
Do you have any examples of cities that are leading the way in this area?
Copenhagen is a great example.
Copenhagen.
They've been consistently ranked as one of the most sustainable cities in the world.
Okay, so what are they doing right?
Well, they have a huge network of bike paths,
Right.
a really efficient public transportation system, and they're super committed to renewable energy.
So they're like walking the walk.
They are, and they have tons of parks and gardens, too.
Yeah, Copenhagen is known for being a very green city.
It's like a model for sustainable urban development.
Okay, so we've got eco-lodges, responsible tours, sustainable cities. It's really cool to see all these different ways that tourism can be done sustainably.
Yeah, there's so much innovation happening.
But it makes me wonder, how do we make sure this isn't just like a niche thing?
Right. How do we make sustainable tourism the norm?
Yeah, exactly. Not just like these little pockets of good practice.
That's the million-dollar question. And I think it comes down to creating the right environment for it to thrive.
Okay, so what does that look like?
Well, governments have a big role to play.
All right.
They need to set policies and regulations that incentivize sustainable practices.
So rewarding businesses for being eco-friendly?
Exactly. Things like tax breaks for investing in renewable energy,
Okay.
or stricter environmental standards for hotels and transportation providers.
So it's like making it easier and cheaper to do the right thing?
Yeah, and they also need to invest in infrastructure that supports sustainable tourism.
Okay, so what kind of infrastructure?
Things like public transportation networks, bike paths, charging stations for electric vehicles.
Yeah, so it's convenient for people to make sustainable choices.
Exactly. And of course, consumer demand is huge too.
Right.
The more travelers prioritize sustainability,
Yeah.
the more businesses will respond by offering eco-friendly options.
So it's like voting with our wallets.
Totally. And we have the power to make a difference with our choices.
But how do we know which businesses are actually sustainable?
Right, because there's a lot of greenwashing out there.
Yeah, it's hard to tell who's genuine sometimes.
It can be, but there are some things you can look for.
Okay, like what?
Well, there are a bunch of certification programs that evaluate the sustainability practices of tourism businesses.
Okay, so look for those certifications.
Yeah. For example, there's the Global Sustainable Tourism Council, or GSTC.
Right.
They have a set of global standards that cover all aspects of sustainability.
So if a business is GSTC certified, they're legit.
Exactly. And there are other certification programs too, often specific to certain regions or types of tourism.
Got it. So do your research.
Yeah, and there are also websites and travel agencies that specialize in sustainable tourism.
That's handy.
They can help you find eco-friendly accommodations, responsible tours, destinations that are committed to sustainability.
So it's not as hard as it used to be to find sustainable travel options.
Definitely not. And I think more and more travelers are realizing that their choices matter. They want to make a positive impact.
It's like a shift in mindset.
Yeah, from just consuming to being a steward.
I like that, steward of the planet.
It's about taking care of the places we visit.
All right, so we've talked about how to make tourism more sustainable.
Yeah.
But now I think it's time to talk about the why.
Okay.
Why is this shift towards sustainable tourism so important?
Right. What's at stake if we don't get this right?
Yeah. What happens if we just keep doing things the way we've always done them?
That's a big question, and I think it's one we need to address head on.
So we've spent a lot of time, talking about all the different ways that tourism can be more sustainable.
Yeah.
All these cool initiatives, all the different players involved. But I think it's time to kind of step back for a second.
Okay.
And ask ourselves, why does this even matter?
Right. Why should we care?
Yeah. What are the stakes if we don't get this right?
Yeah. That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah, it's easy to get excited about all the positive stuff. But what happens if we just keep doing things the way we've always done them?
Well, I think the most obvious consequence is environmental damage.
Right.
We're already seeing the impacts of unsustainable tourism in so many places.
Yeah, like what kind of impacts are we talking about?
Well, coral reefs are getting bleached by pollution and warming waters.
Oh, yeah.
Forests are being cleared to make room for resorts.
Oh, it's so sad.
It is. Beaches are covered in plastic waste. It's really heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's like we're destroying the very things that people want to see.
Exactly. And it's not just about losing beautiful places,
Right.
These ecosystems, they provide all these vital services, they regulate the climate, they support biodiversity, they provide livelihoods for local communities.
No, it's like a whole chain reaction.
Exactly. When we damage the environment, it has all these knock-on effects.
Yeah, it impacts food security,
Yeah.
clean water, human health. It's all connected.
Right. And then there's the social and cultural impact, too.
Okay.
Unsustainable tourism can lead to the displacement of local communities.
Oh, yeah.
The erosion of cultural traditions, the commodification of heritage.
It's like we're turning these places into theme parks.
Yeah, and losing the authenticity that makes them special.
And what about the people who live in these places?
Right. They're the ones who are often most affected.
Yeah. Are we creating a world where future generations won't even be able to experience these places?
That's a really important question to consider.
And it's not just about future generations, right?
Right.
The impacts are being felt right now by communities all over the world.
Exactly. It's happening as we speak.
Can you give us an example of what this looks like?
Sure. Imagine a coastal community that's always relied on fishing.
Okay.
Then a big resort comes in, brings a bunch of tourists, but also pollution and overfishing.
Yeah.
The local fishermen can't make a living anymore. Their way of life is disrupted. Their culture is threatened.
It's like the benefits are going to outsiders.
Yeah. And the costs are being borne by the locals.
It's not fair.
It's not, and it's happening all too often.
Okay, so we've talked about the risks of doing nothing. But let's flip it around. What's the potential upside?
Yeah.
What could the future look like if we actually embrace sustainable tourism?
Well, for one thing, we could preserve all those amazing natural and cultural treasures that we keep talking about.
Yeah, instead of destroying them.
Exactly. Imagine a world where tourism actually contributes to protecting and restoring ecosystems.
It sounds kind of utopian.
Maybe, but it doesn't have to be a dream.
Right.
We can make it a reality. And it's not just about the environment either.
Right.
Sustainable tourism can create more equitable and resilient economies,
Okay.
where tourism benefits local communities, supports small businesses, provides decent jobs.
So it's about spreading the wealth more evenly.
Exactly. And it's about fostering cultural exchange and understanding,
Yeah.
where tourists and locals can connect on a deeper level, share stories, traditions, perspectives.
It's about breaking down those barriers.
Exactly. And creating more meaningful interactions.
And it's about changing the way we think about travel,
Mm-hmm.
from just consuming to being more conscious and responsible.
Yeah, like we were talking about before, that idea of stewardship.
Right, taking care of the places we visit and the people who live there.
Exactly, because ultimately it's not just about saving the planet.
Right.
It's about creating a better world for everyone.
A more just equitable, fulfilling world.
Yeah, that's the goal.
And it sounds like tourism could actually play a big role in achieving that goal.
I think it can if we do it right.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
Yeah.
We've talked about the challenges, the opportunities, the potential impact of tourism.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty inspired.
Me too. It's
Yeah.
definitely given me a lot to think about.
Yeah, and I hope our listeners are feeling inspired too.
I hope so.
So as we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners?
Well, I guess my main message would be to just encourage everyone to be a conscious traveler.
Okay.
Educate yourself about the places you're visiting.
Do your research.
Exactly. And make choices that align with your values.
Support businesses that are doing the right thing.
Exactly. Vote with your wallet and don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yeah, something doesn't seem right. Speak up.
Exactly. And share your experiences.
Tell your friends about the amazing sustainable tourism initiatives you found.
Yeah, spread the word. Inspire others to join the movement.
It's about creating a ripple effect.
Exactly, one conscious choice at a time.
Well said. Well, this has been a fantastic deep dive. I've learned so much.
Me too. Thanks for having me.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope you've enjoyed it. And until next time, keep diving deep.